Hi everybody. I wanted to take advantage of this beautiful day and provide you a bit of feedback on your discussion forum that dealt with the question of the headquarters of the United Nations. As you know, or as you read, the United Nations currently and for the last 70 or so years have been headquartered in New York City, right? It's on the east side around 39th Street or so, that big, huge building. I don't know if you've ever visited. It's worth a visit. But I posted the question of, does it matter where the headquarters of the United Nations are located? And if so, should we try to maybe relocate them? Should we move them from New York City? And I opened that for your discussion. And I have to say, I liked a lot what you brought up. It came from different points of view. But in general, many of you thought that, yes, it matters where the headquarters are, but that New York City is pretty good fit for what we are looking for. And so people talked about security, accessibility, the diversity of New York City, the tradition. Keith mentioned that, if we've been doing something for so long, the traditions are important and we should maintain them. But at the same time, both me and other students brought up the question of, okay, so if it matters where the headquarters are located, maybe we should adjust things a little bit. There could be a number of reasons for that. For example, when we decided on the location of the headquarters, some 70 years ago, there were 51 members to the United Nations. Right now, there are 193. So whatever consensus or majority was for that decision about 70 years ago could have and probably have changed ever since, because of so many new countries and new people that are now part of the discussion. Even if we think about security and accessibility and how wonderful New York City is and how diverse and open it is, we could look at all of those from a point of view that this is kind of a Western-centric approach. Because, yeah, New York City is fairly secure and probably more secure than many other cities around the world, but there are a lot of other cities that could provide the same level of security, regardless of where they are located. And when you think about accessibility, we living here in the United States or part of the Western world, we assume that we can access New York, right? But for somebody who lives many thousands of miles away, where airline tickets may be very expensive, or visa rules getting into the United States is not easy for everybody. And so just for that reason, the accessibility may not be as easy as we may like to think so. And the same goes for diversity. Again, we think of diversity from our Anglo-American or Western perspective, and what do we bring into the mix? But other countries may look at that very, very different, and they may want to see a different majority in place with us as the minority, right? So just and again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. We just have to consider different points of view. Some of you have argued that we actually need to have the headquarters in a non-Western city, right? Or even this idea that non-Western location would give the UN back to the people. Jada mentioned that, right? And some others. This idea that because we have Western countries so dominant in international politics, having something symbolic like the headquarters of the United Nations could be a nice way of increasing diversity and inclusion in this organization. There were some students that talked about the idea of a rotating location. I would like to mention, this idea that the headquarters should actually move with the Secretary General, right? Secretary General is the head or the administrative head of the United Nations that's being elected every 5 years for up to 2 terms. So maybe we will see the headquarters of the United Nations moving to the home country or home city of the Secretary General every 5 or 10 years. This idea was from Justina. Sorry about that. Marlene went an even step further and said, why do we need an actual headquarters? We can have rotating places for meetings, but the headquarters should go virtual. We all learned in the last couple of years how well you can do virtual politics, negotiations, discussions, etc. And so why do we actually need a headquarters? As a rebuttal to those points, there were a number of you who said, well, what about the cost of moving and removing and maybe rebuilding new buildings? And for that, this idea of a virtual headquarters or just like a changing location with the Secretary General, not recreating a full headquarters every time we shift the location, could be a very, very useful one. So we can reduce the cost. And finally, a number of you have mentioned the impact on New York City. So if we put everything else aside, there are considerations that come with the city itself, right? As citizens of New York City, we might want the headquarters to stay here because it is an attraction for world leaders, for people who work here, and that brings business. It also brings a lot of headaches to the city. But all in all, do we really want to give up on that very special location, the headquarters of the United Nations? So that's what came up from your forum, from your discussions. And again, I don't think there is a clear answer one way or the other. What is important to remember is that there are different thoughts or different answers to this question, and it is important to continue and consider all of them, especially when we want to be inclusive and allow many countries and many ideas into this body, the United Nations. Thank you.